Welcome to the Marketing B-Sides. I'm your host, Tom Hootman. I'm also the CEO and founder of Mixtape Digital, but this isn't about that. This is a podcast where every single last person in the world's a marketer, and none of us pretend to have anything remotely figured out, as I love to say. Today's guest is pretty cool. So in this business, my business, our business, a lot of our businesses, I run an agency. I run agencies for a while. Agency land, as they call it, it's really, really tough to differentiate yourself. And people talk a lot about blue ocean, red ocean, where we're going to plant our flag on what makes us different. And it's really, really, really easy in agency land to get caught up in the business of yes, no matter what, and just trying to win as many clients as possible and figuring out on the back end. It's a temptation I think a lot of people struggle with, myself included from time to time. And it's something that today's guest has a unique stance that I to say I admire the stance is an understatement. Just an incredible human being, honestly. And you're about to meet Renia. Realign Consulting is her company. And Realign Consulting is an agency, yes, is also a consulting firm, fractional CMOs. They do things very differently than other agencies. And I'll shut up in a minute and I'll let Renia kind of take it from there and tell you more about it. But what really impressed me more than anything else about this conversation is, number one, I've met with Renia a few times, and it's impossible not to be impressed and to be motivated and to come out of the conversation with a positive frame of mind about agencies and people doing great work in our industry and being honest and transparent and upfront about what is a good client and what isn't a good fit for them. But more than anything else, number one, she's more organized than I'm ever going to be. And for those of you who watch this on YouTube, you can see behind her, there's a calendar that she talks about a bit. That's incredible how organized she is. She's also an Eagles fan, go Birds. And they have a process that they stick to for all the clients that want to work with them. And I used to have a saying, we used to talk a lot about every time we would kind of create a process or have a benchmark. We won't work with anyone unless they fit this parameter. It felt like the next prospect in broke those rules and puts you back in a position of being like, hey, okay, we'll make an exception this time. Because you kind of talk yourself into, what if we did really well here in this group? And I like that. I like the idea that there are agencies saying, no, I'm sorry, we're not a fit. And not just no, we're not a fit because of budget, which I think is the number one reason, or niche, that agencies do say, hey, I'm sorry, you seem great, but you're not a perfect fit for us. But the way she goes about ensuring alignment from day one and the investment that clients make in ensuring that her team can put forth the best results possible is beyond impressive. I love this conversation, and I'm excited for you to hear it. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation half as much as I did. Really insightful, wonderful, magnetic personality. Like, subscribe, tell your friends about it. If you want to be a guest, let me know. You know someone who wants to be a guest, let me know. I'm always open to it. And getting guests is a hard thing to do, because I want to keep the guests like the interesting, and I don't just want to talk to people in my circle of trust. So I like talking to strangers. I mean, who doesn't like talking to strangers? Anyway, enjoy this episode. Thanks so much. So I appreciate you making time. You and I have caught up a few times, and you're the busiest woman in show business. I think the first meeting, you grabbed my calendar and it was like 8 weeks out, and I was like, oh, goodness, this
I
is
mean, I don't want it to be that way. In full disclosure, like, I look at my calendar and I look that I know exactly what I'm doing for the next 6 weeks, and I'm a little sad.
How far ahead do you look?
So I plan blocks for the quarter, every quarter. And then Stephanie, my project manager, is usually booking me 6 weeks out. Like, that's where we're at right now, unfortunately.
I say fortunately, you're so organized. That's incredible. Honestly.
We are very organized. I have color coding everywhere on my calendar. Tom, if I showed you my calendar, you would probably vomit. It's like, I tell people tongue in cheek. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I had a VP of sales, shout out Kayla Kurtz, who was on this podcast. She had 2 notepads. She had a small notepad for the day and like a bigger notepad for ongoing. And she had 4 or 5 different colors. And she would carry them around with her. And it was easy to like poke fun at. She was the most organized person. She never forgot anything. And she was always the first to follow up. Hey, and I was like, I need to get 2 notepads and some highlighters.
Yeah, I tell people tongue in cheek that like my Venus is in Virgo, so organization is my love language. But the truth is, I read the 4-Hour Work Week as people did back in the era that I started my company. And something Tim Ferriss said in that book really got to me, which is like, if you are busy, it's because you have no priorities. And so I started like the calendars behind me, the pink stickies start the year. That's time off. And that goes up before anything else. And then we plan around that. And then like speaking and strategic planning retreats go up next. And then everything else has to fit around that. So, like, part of why my calendar is booked out as far as it is I will only do a certain number of meetings every week because I can't lead my company and do what I need to do for my staff if I spend 10 hours a day in meetings. So, we have a cap on how many meetings I will do every week. I'm also an extreme introvert, so meetings take so like we have a cap on how many I will do every week, and that pushes things out.
I've heard of that before about the yearly calendar starting with time off, vacations. Honestly, I'm jealous of the calendar behind you. I really am because it's a smart way to plan things. And then also, I want to say that you're a keynote speaker. You speak all the time, but you're an introvert. In my opinion, I've found that people who are introverts tend to be the strongest communicators. I think that maybe it's the introversion slash empaths where you're considerate and you listen. And I've worked with a lot of salespeople in a lot of different industries, outside sales especially. We talked about that a minute ago, where there's the attitude of as long as I'm talking, they can't say no,
Yeah.
and they just go and go and go and go. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were an assistant VP in banking, which is a natural segue into the land you're in now, total sarcasm. So you've been, you said you're coming up on 20 years since you founded your
Yes, next
company.
year will be 20 years. Yeah.
For the uninitiated, can you give us the snapshot of what Realign does?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say we build bridges and clean up messes, but I think the official answer is that we are a marketing and brand partner and a strategy firm partner. All of our engagements start with strategic planning, which is crazy for a marketing company in some ways, but that comes from my banking background, where I really understood that most companies don't understand their finances. And so you can't really understand what you need to do for marketing if you don't understand how you're making money, where you make the most money, and back into it from there. So I mean, we didn't start that way. We started in '08, which is a great time to start a business.
Good timing.
Anybody who's old enough to remember that, thinking that I thought that I was going to do essentially what I did in banking in the private sector, right? Like we talked a little bit ago before we started recording about consultants. I thought I was going to be a consultant to help people with like their business plan and how to prepare for a loan and, all the stuff I was doing in banking. And if you remember '08, Facebook pages were newly a thing. And I had a Facebook page that this is how old this was. Okay. How close to the beginning. My slug on my original Facebook page was slash small business coach.
It's a nice get.
And it was back in those glory days where like you could post something and someone would see it immediately. Y'all, Facebook used to end. I said that to my kids recently and they were like, it did what? Like
Used to
it would
end.
just end and you'd have to wait till new stuff happened.
No, yeah, that's how you were like, oh man, I've been on this way too much. I've been on this at least an hour because it's over. There's no updates.
Yeah. So people started asking us, how did you do that? How did you how did you get clients from there? How are you using this Facebook thing? Right. And I got an engagement that I probably shouldn't have had from where I was to help a multinational franchise figure out how to do this social media thing. And that kind of changed the trajectory of the business pretty quickly. And that so we sort of accidentally became a marketing company. Tom, I have a degree in Iranian politics, and I didn't intend to be a banker. I certainly did not intend to be a marketer. It's just kind of right place, right time, and a skill set that I didn't know was right that turned out to be very right for that particular time.
I was going to mention this and then you brought it up. I think what drew me to like what I love about this industry is that while it's less nascent than it was, I started as a director of new business in 2011. And so at that time, nobody on the team, there were no marketing degrees to be had. Everyone on the team, I mean, our president was a philosophy major, phenomenal manager, right? Could connect with people. We had English majors. My best sales rep was an English teacher who did student teaching and was like, I don't really want to do this, and said, hey, they're doing this. She literally found the job on Craigslist back when you could post
Yeah.
jobs on Craigslist and people actually read them. So everyone had this different background. And then we kind of pivoted into, as we scaled and as the years went on, the ideal candidate was someone with a mathematics background who was had that functional capability with data. And then you realized over time the team was skewing into crazy smart, but also struggled with client communication. So then we tried to skew it the other way. And it's different because now, I mean, two of our wonderful entry level folks are graduates from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University with marketing degrees. And I think that it's still an industry that's so vast that can teach you a little bit about everything. But until you actually get into an agency or until you get an in-house role and realize just how different it is, it's not like you have to, it's like being a plumber. The best way to do it is to apprentice under someone for years because you just see all the random shit that happens and you learn how to do the right thing by seeing how things go wrong and how to fix them, or bumping into a wall and learning there's a wall here. Don't go in this direction again, which is fascinating to me. Is there an element from your, I'll say your banking background that you started on this angle of like consulting with SMBs, helping them solve the finance side? Is there an element of that even today you still see clients desperately lacking from those first days?
Yeah, I think this is kind of esoteric, but I think SMBs in particular don't understand bank niches. So they don't understand their finances and they also don't understand that like when one bank tells them no, it may be because it's the wrong niche bank. And so they need to go ask again somewhere else. I do really miss the resourcing. Like, I remember telling my ex-husband, and this may be part of why he's my ex-husband, right? When I first started my company, that I'd be able to replicate my banking salary in 90 days. It took 7 years. And the part of that is because, like, if you've never been in small business, which I hadn't at that point, you don't understand the difference in resourcing. It's actually why I don't usually hire people with marketing degrees or MBAs in particular, is they're taught how to lead and how to run marketing at big companies with lots of resources. And I think the same thing happens to small business, right? Is like they read the books about how to do the things that are profiling big companies. And so they try to replicate those things. And that's not necessarily going to work for them if they don't have the scaling resources.
I'm glad you told me 7 years because that gives me hope. I'm kidding.
Maybe don't then, yeah, maybe don't tell anyone that or nobody will start a business.
No one will
Right?
start a business. Well, it's true. Until you start a business, you really just have to dive in and learn. And I think that something I tell people is that, like, you have to be a student. You have to be comfortable not knowing any answers. It humbles you. And I made a
Mhm.
few videos when I first started, and I actually kind of peeled it back a bit because I was just kind of being whimsical and off the cuff. And I had a couple people message me and they're like, hey, like, don't worry, you're going to be great. I'm like, no, everything's great. I'm just kind of cracking a joke about, I don't know how taxes work. So why not start a business? Because it's going to force me to learn how taxes work. It's the adage of with client pitches or client deadlines, like, give us a deadline. Once we have a deadline, we work backwards and the work starts, right? Like, we work faster and better. If you tell us no rush, oh goodness, it's going to meander about and the weeds are going to grow on it. So, like, knowing that, okay, let's do this, we're doing this, and stepping out into the gray area forced me to learn, okay, cash flow, when can I pay myself? How do I pay myself? Like, my poor accountant, Kim, I'm always like, Kim, how do I do this? And she's like, that's a great question. And so she's even educational. I'll sit down with her and that's where I learned, like, she's like 90% of her clients are still on this, like, a lot of them run their end of month and then they'll take their draw based on like how much is left, like, and how little they could. She's like, some folks are literally going day to day. And I think that is particularly for SMBs who are local. When I think of restaurants and I think of retail, it is month to month, week to week. And you trial by fire, right? Like, having to learn it, let alone when it starts to scale and grow. it can be tough.
For sure, and I do wanna say, though, like, this was one of the biggest lessons I learned in business was, like, I always put that label on, like, "Well, this is a local electrician or a local restaurant or whatever, they don't know," but somehow this company that's gotten to $100 million, also a small business, right, is they know now, they don't know either. In fact, sometimes they know less because it's easier to hide
Yeah.
from the numbers at that point.
Yeah, or they can scale fast enough to delegate it away. And that's where I think you run into founders who get to a company to a point where they have an amazing team and they're good. That's what makes them a good founder, right? Surround yourself with smart people and get out of the way. But they also, if left to their own devices, wouldn't have the first inkling of, I have no idea what's going on really. Like they lean on that team to be responsive to them. You should remind me of when it dawned on me a few years ago that I was older than my mom was when I moved out of the house and was like, I'm just going to move to Bloomington. And I thought then she was old and had everything figured out. And I was like, oh goodness, no, we're all children. No one has anything
Yeah.
figured out, do they?
I was just gonna say, like, the dirty little secret that I feel like none of us talk about because we have survivorship bias is I've seen as many companies fail because they grew too fast as fail because they didn't grow fast enough. Scaling can screw you and
Hard.
in ways that you just cannot get your feet back underneath you. And that's part of why we do things the way that we do is like, what is the point of working that hard for everything to just fall apart?
Well, it's something that blew me away and impressed the hell out of me when you and I first started talking was the way you do things. Like you are intentionally selective, your process of doing consultation, the requirements, not that you have like this, you might, knowing you, it's probably on the other wall, but like this list of requirements that you hold each prospective client to. In this business, it's so easy to get in the trap of yes, 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 we can make it work. We can change them, right? Like don't worry, I'll fix them, right? Like that you say yes and you bite off more than you can chew. And what I've learned from moving very quickly from the business of yes into the business of what's the right fit for us is that it grinds up the team around you. It causes undue stress. And in a lot of ways, it's even having one conversation with a client and being open and honest up front about what you really can do versus just smiling and crossing your fingers behind your back can help make everyone's life easier. How did you land on this selectiveness of here's who we'll work with? And how do you say no if there's something that comes along and you're like,
Pain, 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 pain. Isn't that how we always learn?
well, maybe I'm a glutton. I keep hitting myself in the hand with a hammer, but I'll learn someday. But you're
We
right.
have
Like,
3 bright lines though, Tom. Like, I wanna say, like, we don't have a scorecard. Some of my companies have, like, a complicated go, no-go scorecard for choosing clients. We have 3 bright lines, that's it. Line 1 is my team and I have to believe in what they do. That is actually a disqualifier a lot of the time, and I think really something that a lot of small companies, especially marketers, should think more about. And this is where I can, like, get on my soapbox is like your job as a marketer is to expand their reach. If you don't believe in what they do, what the hell are we doing? Right.
no, you're right.
So that's our first bright line is like we have to believe in what they do. And then second, we have to believe in why they do it and how they do it. Meaning we have to believe in their team and the way they're doing the work because I don't want to help grow them if I think that they are treating people like crap or only in it for the acquisition or like making the world generally a suckier place to be. I'm just not interested. And then third, and this is maybe the one that was the hardest for me to come to, but third is they have to be able to afford to pay for us for 6 months because all of our retainers are a minimum of 6 months without making a dollar and be okay. That gives us space in the first retainer, the first round of our relationship to do all of the foundational shit that usually doesn't get done because your client is wanting you to run at results in the first 30 days. And so you don't have time to lay the bricks. We are bricklayers. So now that's a privilege of the way we've built our business, right? I don't work with startups for that reason. They need to be able to afford that runway time. That's just the way I'm built. But that's come through pain. I don't like to do things backwards and things that don't matter. So like we don't work with big corporate clients because of pain, because I have put years of my life into building something a couple of times that gets trashed or never sees the light of day. And that just seems like a big giant waste of my life energy. So that's where we landed. But like that's basically the three lines they have to pass. That's it.
The third line, they have to pay for you for 6 months and not make a dollar off of it.
Be able to. Yeah.
Be able to, not have to. You're right.
Yeah.
Poor vernacular on my part. They have to be able to. Do you ever have clients? I mean, do you have is that a conversation with them up front? Obviously, as part of this consultation. Do you have a lot of clients who will will be like, "No, yeah, we can do that," and then once the ink is dry, they tear the mask off and they're like, "Oh, by the way, we need to move faster."
No, not really. So we have it happen in engagement. So like we've been working with a client for a couple of years and they're like, now we want to run 150 miles an hour. And that is one of the ways that engagements will end for us because that's just not a thing that we do. We're like, go forth and conquer, but we're going to need to find you somebody else to do that with. Because we start with strategic planning now. So this is a thing that used to happen back in the old days, but because we start with these 2-day strategy retreats now, everything comes out. Like everything comes out. Our clients get in a room with me and sometimes with Stephanie, depending on the size of the team. And we have it out about these things. So there's a really high level of trust and all of their expectations come out by the end of that.
Is that always on site or do you do that remote? How do you do that the 2-day?
So we actually insist that they get off-site from their location. So we've been everywhere from like a fancy Airbnb in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, which I didn't know was a place, in the middle of a nor'easter last year with an executive team, to like, fancy hotel ballrooms and everything in between. We get them off-site out of their day-to-day. And many of them, they have never done anything like that.
I love it because I've always been a big proponent of get in front of your clients. I love client
Yeah.
visits. I love pitching in person, but I really love client visits because in a 1 hour call, a 2 hour, even a 2 hour call or a 3 hour meeting, like it's what happens around the meeting that really impacts the relationship and the alignment that moves us forward, that tends to propel us. When you meet someone as another human in a room, the work gets done faster. Yes, that's great. You can collaborate faster, but I think it's more than that. It's the conversations around that come up. The oh by the ways that we've doubled the size of clients because someone in the room is like, oh by the way, has anyone ever mentioned we do this? And you're like, well, yeah, we can help with that. That would never have come up had we not been in a room together after the meeting, right? Before we
Yeah.
all went for drinks and dinner or whatever. I do think that what I love about that idea is that it's a, what did we call it at my last agency? A chem session, right? Like the
Yeah.
chemistry, you're checking the chemistry. They're vetting you just as much as you're vetting them at that point. Is this prior to you signing an agreement, this 2-day, or is this the kickoff of the engagement? Like, is this the last step in a vetting, like part of your process of deciding whether or not to work together? Or is this, okay, we're going to do this. We've signed. Now let's do the 2 days.
Yeah. So I want to say, like, first of all, that this evolved. So we used to have two pieces of the business, right? We had these marketing retainers and we had these strategic planning retreats that we did every year. And they were just kind of separate pieces of the business. In 2022, we started to really pull those two pieces together because I started seeing the same pattern and like all the red flags would come out in advance to deal with when we had this happen first. What I say about the strategy retreats is like, we are in a privileged position of almost all of our clients today are referred to us by other clients. It's very, and that's been built over time because like we don't fail. And most of our clients have worked with other marketing companies before they come to us. And they come to us because they've tried a lot of different things and it has not worked. So we are often like they're at the point of exasperation and somebody that what we do has already worked for has told them that this works. And they're like, whatever you say, I will do it, right? Because
Hmm.
we are tired of this not working. That's not how things always work. The strategy retreats are a sell. Most people are like, I want a marketing retainer and you want to do what? Right. And they're a resource intensive thing for that company to do, especially smaller businesses that are not used to doing retreats like this all the time. But if they're in for that, they're in for the ride.
Yeah, that's
Everything
yeah.
after that's gonna be easy.
I think it's great. Again, it takes having a calendar that's mapped out on your wall behind you, but it's great.
We also do just I wanna say transparently from, like, a mechanics position. So depending on the we scale the cost of those based we have a sliding scale based on the company size and the size of the team, but they start at $15,000, right? And then they slide up from there depending on the company size and the size of the team. And we do, a couple dozen of those every 18 months or so. That's a nice little chunk of revenue that is just there in these one-off hits that makes decisions on the longer term things easier to handle.
Do you still fight ever the temptation to like, what if I scaled this and 10x that and grew my team? Or have you learned your lesson?
Occasionally, think shout out to my husband, Craig. He does not understand why we don't do more scaling. I have not a lot of heart for the scaling of the business. Like, if I had a partner who was really into the people management of scaling the internal team, I think I might be interested in it. I am a lot better at the conceptual side of things. Like, I'm better at the writing and the speaking and the selling and the like I don't have a lot of the right skill set for the building the internal team that I would want to have to do that. I have 10 people on my team right now, and that is about my limits.
10's a good limit. I think 10's to get over 10 and you're like, okay, who's going to help me with this at this point? Because it gets hard,
Yeah.
admittedly. I want to shift gears a bit because it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't talk about AI.
All right, here we go. Now you're really going to get me on my soapbox.
Yeah, I want it because I know you have multiple. Get your tallest soapbox out, and it's interesting because every we all get this question every day. I get this question this morning in a discovery call, a second call after a discovery call about the details of how we layer in AI in our day to day and how do we leverage AI. It's a softball question everyone tosses around that feels like the to me, I'm always like, how do you want to answer it as like honestly and like with teeth as much as possible. But at the same time, as I like to say, it's a baseball term, you're at the mercy of your dumbest competitor when it comes to signing free agents. There's always going to be someone out there with
Fair.
deeper pockets who just wants to sign somebody. And there's this allure, this competitive draw to like what the Joneses are doing about to turn into an AI hustle bro. I'm never going to do that. But I will admit I nose around to see like what's out there, what aren't we doing, what's our approach, how are we continuously refining our approach to AI. There's this efficiency trap where AI lets us do things faster, but not necessarily better, right? Do you think we're losing the ability to have a unique opinion because we're relying on the average of what a model tells us? And how do you leverage AI realistically for clients without just painting a bubblegum forest and a candy cane highway that you really don't use?
Yeah, I can tell you what I answered that question with. That's probably a
Yeah,
good
it'd be
start.
great.
When clients or potential clients ask me that question, I answer back with a question like, "Why are you asking that?" Because I want to know, like, if they're asking that question because they think they need to use the word AI, we got to unpack like what is the point of this? And again, this is a lesson I learned through pain. I was there at the very beginning of marketers using social media. And I was one of those marketers that was like, because it was Facebook back in the day, y'all, Instagram didn't exist yet. TikTok didn't exist yet. I'm old. I'm 42 and it makes me a dinosaur in this industry, right? But we,
Don't say that. Don't say that.
but I was the 20 something asshole telling everyone they had to get on social media or their business was going to die. It wasn't true then. It isn't true now. So, what I mostly want people to do is like slow the hell down. If the reason we're talking about AI is just because we think we have to use the word AI, we're in trouble already. What is the benefit that it can give to you? What's the gap that it can fill? And I am really passionate about the less you know about a subject or an area, the less you should use AI because it's much more hazardous if you don't know when it's wrong or doing weird things or, overconfident. So I want first the like, what do we need to, what's the gap we're trying to fill or what's the efficiency we're trying to make? And then I want to ask a second question of like, have you tried automation? Because that's a thing that's been around for a real long time that most companies are not using very well, that we have tried and true paths for that are a lot less hazardous. And then if we get past those two, then it's time for like, okay, now let's talk about how we use AI here. And we use it a lot. I especially love it for reporting internally because what we used to have to write, right? I can turn a 5-hour writing session into a 1 hour with AI, but we also have really hard lines about where we won't use it. And I think what most marketers and SMBs in particular should be asking themselves right now is not like, how do we use AI, but like, how do we make the people change that we need to make so that AI is a tool that makes people better at their work, that makes them more efficient at their work, that makes them more valuable to the company, not how do we use AI just because it's the buzzword of the moment. And there's my TED Talk. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I mean, it's funny because I have said to the team, and this is true. I said, like, the second person to say AI in a pitch loses, right? You have to mention it first or you look reactive. Now, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to have an answer and you have to have some whiz bang, flashy thing you want to unveil, but you have to acknowledge it first because if the client or the prospect brings it up first, it only looks like we're responding to their question and it diminishes a bit of the, well, we had to bring it up. It brings up that we had to bring it up to them. You didn't. It was going to come up anyway, but it's interesting that why are you asking that is correct. It's like slow the hell down is another thing you said. Slow the hell down. And why are you asking that? Are is it is it because I think the answer truly is are you asking it because you feel like you have to ask that question because your C-suite wants to know what are they doing with AI? And does your C-suite do anything with AI? They do not. Are they in the buzzword trap? I think the buzzword trap is real. Because I also think my soapbox, there are a ton of amazing tools and uses
Yeah.
that in tandem with the human can churn out really incredible work much more quickly and efficiently. However, you cannot give it too much. It's dangerous. Garbage in, garbage out. And I know of people who've created an echo chamber with their GPT conversations where like it's feeding. Yes, Tom, you're right. That's a great call out. No, I don't know that I'm right. GPT, like you need to challenge me.
We actually have, Tom, I just have to tell you on that. We have an explicit rule in our company that, so we are Claude House because, can I say fuck Sam Altman on your podcast?
You can say fuck Sam
Um,
Altman. No, it's true.
so we're a Claude House and we have an explicit rule that no one is allowed to use the God mode command.
Really? Tell me why.
I'm like, I am not having this level of overconfidence. The combination of deep thinking from the AI and confidence is the most dangerous. So, like, if you can't unpack this thing on your own, and we're needing to go to God mode, we're at very high hazard. Now, this is subject to change as these tools get better and better. They're faster and but right now, it's too high a hazard. And the overconfidence is really a problem for marketers. Like, we like to have the answers.
Yep. We feel like we failed if we don't have the answers. I mean, and the reason is because some clients think you have failed if you don't have the answers, like you're all knowing or omnipotent. And it's like, no,
Well,
like we're figuring it out.
yeah, and quality is so much more important now. I think that's one of the things that we're forgetting is like AI can be a mediocre marketer today. Like
Uh-huh.
if we can't get to high quality, high results, we're all replaced with robots. So like we use Claude every day when we are developing websites, for example. Like we have projects set up in Claude with all kinds of rules and all kinds of artifacts and all kinds of things. So our whole team can work in those projects together and we're like it feels like plugging into the hive mind and it's super cool, right? But we won't put out public facing content that's been AI generated. Like that's a red line because I think Google's going to smack everybody for this as soon as they can figure out how. And I lived through 2012 and Panda and Penguin fuzzy apocalypses. I'm not living that again.
I mean, it's interesting. I couldn't agree more because I've always said you're so much more eloquent. I would never copy paste something, but I've also the way AI has been great for me personally. Mixtape wouldn't exist without it because I'm an introvert, right? And the last thing I would have never I didn't have anyone I really fully trusted that was either not going to smash my idea of starting an agency to bits and or was going to say like, hell yeah, go do it. And then I get out there and like straight down. And having that model to run ideas by and craft some of the early foundations, even helping with the site and helping the model of like what an engagement looks like was like a safe space for me of like being able to have that conversation and get some feedback that was decent. But I had you like, I could very easily see how people are like kind of fooled into or lulled into a sense of absolute trust, which is a very, very bad place to be. I think that it's a tool. It's not something you should ever blanket take at the base level of what it's telling you. You have to look at it through a clear lens. And unfortunately, I see people all the time. Well, you see it all the time. You see LinkedIn posts, for example, that are very clearly copy pasted in. I hate coming up with ideas for LinkedIn. I love telling GPT to come up with 20 really awful shitty ass ideas for LinkedIn because there's something in there that I can take and write my own LinkedIn post and like come up with an idea off of. I need that starter. And that was RFPs were always like that. You would stare at a blank
Yep.
canvas and be like, I got to write. How am I this old and I'm writing term papers, right? It's a term paper.
Yep.
And to start it was always the hardest part. Now you can get it started and be like, shit, this is fucking garbage, but I can work with garbage, right? I can hone garbage and I can pull all the wiring out and I can fix something that's broken more easily than I can build something from scratch.
100% agree with you for where you and I are in our
Mhm.
career. Where I get nervous about those use cases is for earlier career people. And I say that because, like, I use Claude all the time to generate headlines. Like, please generate 7,000 variations of this headline. And then I'm going to take some of these ideas and create something that actually works. And it gets what used to be a really painful process. And in 15, 20 minutes, what used to take me a couple hours sometimes, depending on the piece. And I should also say, full disclosure, like I identify as a writer above anything else. So my marketing hat is always with the writer's hat on. But the thing about that is, I learned how to write headlines by early on in my career as a marketer, writing hundreds upon hundreds, maybe thousands of lines of metadata in a spreadsheet, title tags, meta tags, alt text, right? Learning how to write those things with keywords in a spreadsheet because y'all, we used to have to write all that by scratch, right? So I can do that. Those mechanics are there, those muscles are there. I don't know how someone today learns how to do that if they don't have to write hundreds of lines of metadata, you know?
I had an episode with a producer for Bravo MTV Networks, and she was a producer for like Real Housewives. And we were on a panel together at media school day at Indiana University. And she talked about the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of footage for reality television that they would pull in and how in before AI, you literally got your start as a production assistant, like a PA, and you had the shittiest job in the world because you had to watch and go through reams and reels and
Mhm.
reels of footage. Or they'd be like, find that scene where someone did the thing, and they would have to go find it. It's like a scavenger hunt. And now you can type in a prompt and find it immediately. We talked a bit about that, about how that is what creates the eye for great production. The same concern about entry level, well, people not getting the experience or developing that eye for it because it's almost too easy to find the thing you really want versus the journey of looking for what you want and finding something better along the way.
Yeah.
We,
I think we need to guard our skill sets. So, like, sometimes I feel like I have these conversations and I sound anti AI. I am not that person. We use it every day. We use it a lot in a lot of different contexts. I'm very happy to have it. It makes lots of things much more affordable. That said, we need to know what are your core strengths, right? And I like that strengths finder analogy of that is like a natural talent that has been practiced over time
Mhm.
becomes a strength. If you don't practice, you don't get the strength. And I guard against those pretty closely with my AI tools. So, like, I don't go to AI first when I'm thinking about strategy. when I'm trying to solve a hard problem, I intentionally go for a walk or go for a run and like sit with the problem and come up with my own ideas before I go to AI. And I do the same thing when I write because those are skill sets that are like key to what I want to do in the world. And I need to keep them sharp. And they dull if you go too fast to a tool to do it for you.
My wife and I try to go for a walk almost every day after work. What I enjoy about it is the ability to spend time with her and catch up. But there are some days where I'm like, you're not going to get me because I'm still spinning. I need to
Yeah.
really think through a few things. And it's the greatest way to like process and slow yourself down and really think deeply about the day. It helps me think through the problem because it's me and me for 2 hours figuring out the problem together. It's not me and GPT saying, no, please no M dashes. No, that's not what I meant. Please don't do that. Please stop telling me I'm right. Things of that nature. So I love it. You're not anti AI at all. I think it's a
Yeah.
pragmatic approach to AI and it's realistic because I think it's tempting to be overly pro AI in our industry today.
I got in a lot of trouble, Tom, a couple weeks ago because I gave for what for me was one of the biggest speeches of my career out in San Diego. And the person who introduces me as an AI expert. And I was like, wait a minute, when did that happen? Right. And so the first thing I say before I even dive into what I had planned was like, if you take nothing else from this talk, I would like you to take this. If anyone calls themselves an AI expert and does not work for one of four companies, I would like you to be very skeptical of everything else that comes out of their mouth. That's the most important thing from this talk today. And that's kind of where I'm at is like, uh, I know a lot more about AI than I think the average person does today. And so, you know, but if you're a true expert on this, you work at Google or Anthropic or OpenAI, that's about it. Maybe you work for Elon. That's where all the experts are. None of the rest of us are there yet because we are less than 2,000 days old on this.
And I think that in our industry, it's easy to fool yourself into thinking that everyone's using it to some extent. And I'll tell you, I have a multiple like the group texts, like little pockets of people that I've known for my entire life. And the vast majority of people are like, I'm not using that because they're just not in a field where they use it every day or need to use it every day. Or if they use it to like, give me the recipe for that thing again, right? It's really easy in our field to think that everyone's using it for everything every day and it's a key element of everyone's job. And it's not. I had a very good friend of mine who was asking me just yesterday which of the Gemini, Claude, GPT he should start with. He was like wanted to like really get into it a bit and start to toy around with it. And it was like, honestly, it was refreshing because it
Yeah.
was, you just get so used to like, how is your agency using AI to drive stronger results for us? And you're like, why is every question so heavy, right? To someone being like, hey, which one do I use? I'm like, well, how are you going to use it? I don't know. I'm just toying around. Someone said Claude. Claude's good, but what about GPT? Like that was a fun conversation to have because it feels like everyone is like, no, how are you using it to defeat your enemies? And it's like, stop. It's not that. It's a toy. Everyone plays with the toy. We all get time with the toy. Settle down.
Yeah, who was it? I think it was Scott Galloway on his podcast the other day was talking about that, like, it's almost impossible to get funding right now if you're not an AI startup, like nothing else is getting funded, right? So I think people are just conditioned in our world that they have to use these words. And we've been here before. Like we get to choose. And I was on the team. I want to say, like, I'm preaching because I made this mistake. I was a marketer who did all kinds of shitty marketing things in the early days of social media and SEO and whatever that have been, we now know were terrible things for humans. And I get to choose to do that differently this time. And I'm not anti AI. I want to use it. I want to whatever, but like I am not in for the run fast and break things way of working anymore. That has burned too much of what I love about the world down. We're doing this intentionally now. And that's the hill I'm willing to die on. Like if we go out of business because of it, fine. But we've had our best 2 years ever the last 2 years. So
It's like because you believe in it. You're not trying to sell
yeah.
something. You go back to the three bright lines, right? You 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 realize you're you're looking in a mirror and saying those same 3 bright lines to what you do every day about your own company, right? Like that is you're if you started by measuring yourself to that, do I believe and have a passion for this? Yes, I'm never going to let that go, right? Your 3 bright lines is obviously more organized. We touched on this, more organized and more eloquent than what I say. Like my thing I've said to the team, I don't want to work with dicks. I don't want to work with people with
Yep.
jerks. And so many years when you're in an agency that's growing so fast and scaling and has multiple layers, which I'm not saying it's actually great. I miss those layers because those were people that would help me. But at the same time, I held on to clients and smiled and nodded and took what they dished me out of fear of losing them. And I knew how it was going to end, and you knew it was going to end, and they still got to beat you up on the way out. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. That was like one of the core things.
Yeah.
I fired my first client 2.5 weeks into them being with us. And then I had an existential crisis that night, right in the other room. And I thought, because I've worked with and I've heard these horror stories of business owners who are just like screaming at people and mean. And I just was like, this isn't going to work. Like, this isn't the behavior that we started Mixtape Digital to work with. No offense. I also think that I remember telling them, because the CEO hung up on the call. And I was like, no offense, but that's nature, that's not nurture. And if even if she comes back and apologizes, we're done. Like I can't. And the next day I got online, I thought that night, like, holy shit, am I just going to be the guy who just fires everybody? Client number 1, 17 days in, and the team was like, thank you. We knew how that was going to end. That wasn't going down the right path. And it's like trusting your gut. And for so many
Yep.
years, you're right. In the early days, you just want to grow despite what your gut is screaming at you. And like, you just have to listen. If you just listen to it, you'll be happier in the long run anyway.
Yeah, and I think to be fair to people, Tom, like I feel you on that. That took tremendous courage. Like I don't know if I could have done that 17 days in.
They were
I
small. It's okay.
I will say I've fired 2 clients for bad behavior in our history. You yell at one of my team and it's over. Like that, do not pass go. Like that, it's over. Nobody deserves that. Like, what are we doing? Are we not at a place where we don't scream at people anymore? Right. But the thing that I am probably the most proud of about our work is my first client is still a client. She pays less than anybody else because she's on that retroactive system, right? But like that is part of what, because we do things the way that we do, people stick with us for a long time. And the most common reason that people transition from us is because they've brought someone or sometimes a group of people in-house to do what we do. That makes the whole conversation a lot different, right? But that is going back to the like knowing what the right fit is for you. That's why we work with small business, because that's never going to happen at the corporate level. If you're doing corporate level work, you just have to know that like there's always a bottom dollar or a person transition, no matter how good you are, away from that one going away, right? In small business, if you're producing results and working with good people, people are loyal.
Which is hard to come by. Very hard to come by. I've got one more topic I want to broach because it's important to both of us. And then I got to ask you about your playlist. We'll do it opposite and we'll end with the playlist this time. You and I chatted about something near dear to your heart, which is also important to me and to us here at Mixtape. And you shared some statistics about women founding businesses and the success rate of those businesses. Will you recap that data again for me? Because I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about like mission, right? So we read a lot particularly since 2020, about the rate of acceleration of women starting businesses. And it looks like a really good thing, right? Almost half, something like 48% of businesses started in the US right now are started by women. And we're like, oh, progress. That sounds about right. But then you dig a little deeper in the statistics and find the one that pisses me off, which is of the businesses started by women, only 6% of them will ever gross more than $250,000 a year, which means if you think about everything that comes out after gross, right, they're not making a living, much less employing anyone or anything like that. And that number makes me so angry because I think about all of the access issues that create that, but also the things that like we do as women that hold us back in that space. And like, I want that changed. So we're really working on ways to help move that number right now. And so I always want to say to like, particularly women who are in this space, like, if you feel like you're the only one in the room, it is not an illusion. It usually is because you are the only one.
It's true. So I'd like to unpack a bit the 48 to 6. It's
Yeah.
interesting to me. Why do you think that's the case? Like, what do you think are the roadblocks, or what do you think are the hurdles that women in particular face to number one? Because to me, it's like such a huge monumental step to start a business. You can think
Yeah.
about it and want to do it for, in my case, over probably 20 years. That was the hardest thing for me, was to do it. Once I was pot committed, to use a poker term, I was like, well, we got to do this now. You might as well like run. I don't know what hurdle I might not have hit that's maybe in the way of someone, like a woman who starts a business. Like, where's the disconnect between making such a huge decision, a courageous decision, to use your word, and but then to not see the growth that they deserve, or to run into like some type of brambles and thickets that cap the growth of the org.
Yeah. You want me to piss off the whole internet?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think so there's like the systemic things that are not controversial to most people, right? Like female entrepreneurs have a lot harder time accessing credit, even with equivalent businesses, meaning you and me, we both own marketing companies, right? So let's say we're at the same place. For whatever reason, if I go to get a business loan and you go to get a business loan, just because you're a man and I'm a woman, you have a higher likelihood of success. That makes no sense. And I'm not going to unpack all the reasons why, but there's really good data on this, right? But then also there's this soft thing that I really think shows up of women don't tend to have the support structure relationships
Mm.
that men do that make entrepreneurship a little bit easier. So the way I say this that pisses off the internet is men have wives. So, and I say that because there's a lot of things that women, if you have women around you, whether it's a wife or a girlfriend or a mom or a sister, that they massage life, if you will, that when you are a woman starting a business, all that expectation is still on you.
Yep.
You've got to mom and keep the household and like keep up with all the things and it's hit these expectations that are not easy to do with entrepreneurship. Like they're hard enough in a regular 9 to 5 job. When you're doing something that in the beginning takes everything you have, because that's what it takes in the beginning. I am not one of these like, you can just go start your
No.
business and, it takes everything you have in the beginning. And if you don't have someone else to help make life work around, like, it's really hard to get over that. Like, I am tremendously privileged that my husband makes a lot of the life things work so that I can do a lot
Hmm.
of the business things. But my experience with women that own companies is that is not typical. They're trying to do all of these things perfectly and also run a business. And like, that shit don't work. It just doesn't.
Was it Craig? Was that your husband's name? Shout out Craig again.
Yeah. Craig is awesome.
Craig is awesome. I think about it a lot in terms of there's a there's a cultural bias that very much exists, since, well, like, where the expectation is on people are unconsciously sexist, right? They assume that the child care first responder is the mother, right? Or they
Yeah.
assume, so when they have two contact numbers, a school will call the mother first, just because of that bias that's baked in over millennia, right? That exists. I had a plumber come over once to clear a garbage disposal because I fucked it completely up, and I was a dipshit and threw a bunch of pasta down a garbage disposal, which you don't do. And he literally said to me, "Well, you better have a conversation with the missus about what she's putting down this garbage disposal." And I was like, "Holy fuck, man! Like, really? I'm the guy." I'm the idiot here. And it's just like that unconscious bias. You talk about banking, and this is lost on people because this is just before I was born. Prior to 1974, women were not allowed to apply for a credit card independently without having a man co-sign to be on the account. That is after the Nixon presidency. Like, that is recent history that we've come so far from. And I think what pisses me off about it is that front end stat you mentioned. It's really easy to say 48%, let's stop reading further. We did it, everybody. High five, right? It's equal. Woohoo! When you get into the underlying difficulties that I absolutely agree with, that I wouldn't be here and be able to without a supportive partner who's like new going into it. This is going to be really shitty. Like you're going to work your ass off for a year. Yes. But I'm going to be here at least, right? So like there's a benefit there, I guess. But like without having someone there, there's no way for people with kids, I don't know how they do it, honestly. I don't have kids. We don't have kids, and it's like, I don't know how we would do it with 2 rugrats running around. I can barely do it with 2 dogs, right? Like, it's insanely hard, and I appreciate you bringing up the fact that those inherent biases that exist that are easy to overlook, coupled with the front end stat. The 6% when you told me, I jotted it down, is shocking. You don't have to I know you're thinking through how do you attack this? How do you declare war on this? How do you start to go after that?
We are trying to create programs for women who have been in business for a little bit and haven't hit this number, particularly community based businesses. So that's step one. And also, I think we need to show the people who have actually done it. So, something that we have launching later this year is I've been very reticent to get back like into the podcast, YouTube, whatever space. But now with this mission, I am doing profiles and stories on women who have broken that barrier. So, like, I am going out and finding the 6%. And I think about it just in my world. Like, half of my clients are women in that 6%. That's rarefied air when you think about how few of them there are. So, we are looking like anybody watching or consuming this podcast anyway, if you are a woman who has broken that barrier, we want to tell their stories. We want to show women who are actually doing it. So, and not companies that are putting a woman on at like a 10% owner or whatever, just so they can check a box, right? We are looking at 100% female owned companies who have broken that barrier for at least 3 years. And
Yeah.
we want to tell their stories.
I love that. That's magnificent. Someone already comes to mind that I want to introduce you to for that exact reason.
I love it.
And I know you do everything intentionally, but you mentioned at the front end one of the biases, one of the reasons why that number dwindles to 6 that we take for granted is that the network piece of like the even you look at like Kelly School of Business at Indiana, right? Like it's a male dominated field with a network of men who've all gone to Kelly. And like you've got this group of people that tend to mentor each other. And we seek out people who are like us predominantly. And what I particularly admire about what you're doing is like you're creating that network for other women to have the place to learn and listen and then also even reach out and say, hey, I'm doing this too. And the
Yeah.
story you told resonates with me. And I would love to get your advice, or I would love to know how you approached this, right? That as long as you're providing avenues for people to go down when they're at those moments where they're like, how do I grow this? And I'm having such a hard time doing it, that we all have, that I think we don't understand the inherent advantages that are baked into some people versus others, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Exactly. And I just give you a clear example because we were talking about credit being one of those barriers, right? Like we're now starting to have systems with that because of trying to intentionally create networks. So like First Women's Bank in Chicago, that's the mission they're trying to solve for, right? Is women having access to credit. I think this can shift, but you're so right about the networks and also the understanding the value of the types of businesses women tend to start because they often don't make sense. I've heard horror stories, particularly from like one of the most successful female entrepreneurs I've ever known who makes hair care products for Black women. Like she could not get the funding that she needed because no man could understand why someone would spend the money that she wanted to was her price point on these products. And I'm like, you've never been in a women's beauty store if you don't think they will spend that price point. Like, do you want to come look in my cabinet and see how many thousands of dollars of BS is in my medicine cabinet?
It's equal parts. I admire, beyond admire, that you're taking this on. I would expect nothing less from you, to be honest. You've shared some insanely stark statistics, and anything we can do to help. I'm not going to let you off the hook without the question I normally open with, that you and I, in true fashion, blew through. It's mixtape digital, right? Like there's a boombox behind
Yeah.
me. Music is my thing. I worked in a music land for many years. So I'm just like music, music, music. If your career or life could be boiled down to 3 songs, 2 or 3 songs on a playlist, what would they be and why?
Yeah, I love this question, and I am probably gonna prove my best friend right, who thinks I am a walking Hallmark card. So, number 1 is always gonna be "Drive" by Incubus. That's been my theme song since college. You gotta be in charge of your own life, man. Like, and I have been really into The Great Divide, which is Billy Strings and Luke Combs. I
Mm,
like this idea of building bridges, this idea of, like, we've gotta figure out a way to talk to each other, and ultimately, I think that's most of the work that we do is build a lot of bridges. And then probably my fight song is "Alley in the Jungle" by The Hours, another old one, which
mm.
is basically just a anthem for days that are hard.
Again, very organized. I'm surprised you probably don't have different color Post-it notes on your wall with the 3 songs. I'm just giving you shit because like so well thought out, and I appreciate it. Like I appreciate you picking those songs that mean something to you because I appreciate you finding something meaningful to tell us. It's been
That's so
wonderful.
funny.
Rena, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you.
You too, thank you for this.
Neighborhood